welcome to today's Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're joining me. Pull up a chair to my virtual classroom because today we're going on a massive intellectual journey. We're stepping right out of the dark, chaotic cave of ancient myth and walking boldly into the illuminating light of pure reason. It's the story of how humanity actually learned to think and how those very ancient ideas are still completely shaping our worldview today. Let's get right into it.
Here's our syllabus for today's Socratic seminar. We'll start with Section 1, From Myth to Reason. Then we'll explore Arche, Logos, and Flux, contrast monism versus pluralism, break down the divided line, and wrap up with the dialectics of history. All right, Section 1, From Myth to Reason. To truly get this, you've got to plunge your mind back into the sheer chaos of ancient Greece. Just imagine living in a time when a sudden, terrifying thunderstorm wasn't a cold front moving in. It was literally just the unpredictable, terrifying anger of the gods.
Okay, let's dive into this. For the longest time, the mythological worldview ran the show. Everything was at the whim of the divine. But then, around the 6th century BC in Ionia, boom, a massive intellectual revolution happened. Thinkers began to propose a naturalistic worldview. Instead of a playground for capricious gods, they saw the universe as a cosmos, an ordered arrangement governed by actual, observable natural laws. This was literally the birth of scientific thought. It was the very first time we actively looked for causal natural explanations.
Moving to Section 2, Arche, Logos, and Flux. So once those early physiologists, our very first philosophers, ditched the myths, they became completely obsessed. They wanted to find the single ultimate foundation of all existence.
And they called this foundation the Arche, basically the primary substance or absolute first principle where everything comes from. Thales, the guy usually called the first philosopher, looked around and said, hey, the Arche is water. Which makes sense, right? It changes forms, it's essential for life. But his brilliant student, Anaximander, pushed back. He said, no way, the Arche can't be something ordinary like water. He called it the apeiron, an infinite, formless, eternal mass that just gives birth to distinct things.
Then, right on the heels of that, we get another fundamental concept, the Logos. The philosopher Heraclitus argued that there is an unseen, eternal rational structure that totally regulates and unifies the cosmos. And what's wild about this ancient naturalism is that it perfectly sets the stage for modern science. When physicists today search for universal mathematical laws governing nature, they are basically hunting for Heraclitus's Logos. It's the exact same quest.
But here's the catch. Heraclitus didn't just believe in order. He believed in the order of constant change. He gave us this incredibly poetic insight. You cannot step twice into the same river, for other waters are continually flowing on. He pitched this radical idea that cosmic stability is just a complete illusion. Everything, and I mean everything, exists in a state of constant flux. The river looks exactly the same to us, sure, but the water itself is entirely different.
Which brings us to Section 3, Monism versus Pluralism. This whole constant change idea kicked off a massive debate, leading straight to a core Socratic question. Is reality ultimately just one single frozen thing, or is it made up of many interacting parts?
So we get two huge competing theories. On one side, monism, championed by Parmenides. He used absolute, uncompromising logic to argue that change is literally impossible. If reality is one, it can't become something else. So the universe has to be this frozen, ungenerated sphere of being. On the flip side, pluralism. Empedocles synthesizes earlier ideas and says actually reality is multiple interacting elements, earth, air, fire, and water. He figured change happens when these elements mix and separate, driven by cosmic forces he poetically named love and strife.
All right, Section 4, the divided line. Let's fast forward our timeline to the golden age of classical Athens with heavyweights like Plato and Aristotle. The philosophical focus shifted here. They zoomed out from just the physical cosmos and started diving deep into the profound nature of truth, being, and the soul.
Now, what's really interesting about this is Plato's highly abstract divided line. He split reality into two distinct realms. At the bottom, you have the sensible realm. That's the physical stuff we see and touch. It's always changing, so we can only ever form opinions or changing beliefs about it. But up above is the intelligible realm, and you can only access that through pure reason. This is the home of the forms, the perfect, eternal archetypes of reality. For Plato, true knowledge and absolute certainty only exist up there, way above our messy physical world. But then Plato's star student, Aristotle, brings everyone right back down to earth. He introduces hylomorphism. Aristotle basically says, look, forms don't just float around in some mystical separate dimension. They're immanent. They exist directly inside material objects themselves. He looked at things teleologically, meaning he believed every single thing possesses an inherent potential, moving towards its natural end, or its telos. Think of an acorn. The form of the oak tree is already packed inside it, and its whole telos is to flourish into that tree.
And finally, Section 5, the dialectics of history. We've traced the Greeks talking about flux, opposing forces, logical progression, and the nature of reality. Now, let's jump way ahead to the 19th century and see how these exact same concepts get applied directly to human history.
Enter the German philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Hegel saw reality as this deeply interconnected cosmos animated by universal spirit or Geist. To him, history isn't just a bunch of random events. It is a logical, progressive unfolding of this spirit, pushing humanity toward ultimate freedom and self-realization.
Let's move to the engine of Hegel's philosophy and see how this builds, the dialectical triad. Just like the Greeks saw opposing forces, Hegel said human intellect and history progress entirely through conflict. You start with a status quo, the thesis. Naturally, that generates its own contradiction, the antithesis. These two clash, struggle, and eventually resolve into a higher, more advanced state, the synthesis. And then, the whole cycle kicks off again.
Then Karl Marx steps onto the scene. He takes Hegel's dialectical structure but completely flips it upside down. This is dialectical materialism. Marx argued it's not spirit or evolving ideas driving history. Nope, it's the material world of economics. He splits society into the economic base, how we produce things, and the superstructure, our laws, religion, and culture. Marx said the base shapes the superstructure, so historical progress is actually a mechanical shift driven entirely by material class struggle, opposing economic forces clashing to create a new synthesis.
So the crucial point is how Marx actually applied this. He used this dialectical materialist framework to evaluate the ethical worth of different societal structures throughout time. He wasn't just doing math on an economy. He was asking whether a society's structure actually fulfilled human potential. Did it provide the circumstances we need for real self-realization and freedom?
And this brilliantly highlights the continuity of philosophical thought. Marx's analytical method, taking complex reality, breaking it down into basic, abstract parts, and then rebuilding it to find the inner laws of motion, is a rigorous, logical unearthing of truth. It mirrors the exact intellectual journey we've traced today, all the way from the ancient Greeks hunting for the Arche and Logos, right down to the modern search for the mechanisms of history.
Which leaves us right here, at the culmination of our explainer, with a massive question for you to ponder. As you look at the world around you today, what do you think truly drives the progress of human history? Is it Hegel's evolution of ideas, or is it Marx's reality of material conditions? Or maybe, as those ancient pluralists would suggest, is it a complex mixture of both? Keep questioning, keep looking for that underlying logos, and I'll see you in the next explainer.